Welcome to episode 160 of the quest lore series, Twilight's Promise. To start this quest, you must have completed Children of the Sun. You talk to regular Cento, the Quetzal Keeper, who will let you ride Primio to get to Varlamore. Outside the palace, you meet the Tullus twins, Ennius and Furia, to begin the quest. They're the ones who organised the expedition to Varrock. They tell you that the prince is ready to meet you in the Holy Temple south of the Bazaar. Here you meet Metzli, who is the high priest you saved in the previous quest. She is one of two Teocans, which means leaders of the Sun religion. One is the leader of the darkness and night, and the other is the leader of light and day. You say that you're supposed to be meeting the prince here, and Metzli says that he is downstairs because it's one of the only places where he can get a little bit of peace. The prince is speaking to the other Teocan, Servius, and the reason you are meeting down here is because someone wants him dead. All they can deduce so far is that the assassination was plotted by a Varlamorian, but they have managed to whittle down the number of suspects and believe it's either the Tullus twins or one of the knights that were with them. Servius doesn't want to hide down here in the crypt because he wants to fulfill his duties back at his temple. Now it's your job to investigate the knights on your own. You go into the palace and speak to the Tullus twins again. The delegation that went to Misfalin consisted of 6 knights. 2 are in the bazaar, 1 is at the port, 2 are in the outer fortress, most likely at the pub, and the other 1 is at the Colosseum. You take a crest with you so that they will not ignore you and answer to your request to come to the palace. The 2 knights at the bazaar don't want to leave until they found the thief. They planted a shiny amulet on one of the stalls and it was stolen soon after. You pickpocket a citizen in a blue toga to get the amulet back. Now that their work is done, they'll return to the palace. The knight at the harbour doesn't want to leave until she discovers which ship is involved in weapon smuggling. She says that a crate with weapons should be on the docks next to 2 barrels of fish and opposite a bench. The label on the crate reads Fortis Spark. Now that her work is done, she will return to the palace. Next you go inside the Colosseum. The knight doesn't want to leave until he's completed some training. You fight him with 2 different attack styles. Now that he's satisfied, he will return to the palace. You get to the pub and find the last 2 knights. Seeing that Azali is drunk, you slowly get her to the fountain so that she can refresh herself in the cold water, sobering her up enough, and with that, the last 2 knights return to the palace. Before their expedition to Varlamore, the knights were granted 6 beds in headquarters, and you're asked to see if you can find anything of note. Up the stairs, you search the southern chest in the southern room and find an incriminating letter saying that finally the opportunity has arrived for the Teocan to be murdered whilst in Misfalin. After his demise, the Twilight Promise can begin and they will see the final dawn. You show the Tullus siblings the letter and they say that Vilam is the traitor, so they execute him right on the spot. You think this was a bit sudden and not enough time was given to properly interview Vilam. Now you are to report back to the prince who is at the Teomat, which is a monastery found on the summit of Rallo's Rise. As it would be quite a long walk to get there, it's suggested that you talk to regular Cento to see if you can fast travel there, and he grants you the ability to use your own Quetzal called Renu free of charge. It is capable of flying anywhere in Varlamore if there is a suitable place to land, and you can build some of these landing spots yourself if you would like. Cento gives you some Quetzal feed for Renu, and you fly to the Teomat. Here you find the prince and Servius and mention that murdering the traitor before even having a chance to question them is a little bit suspicious, but the prince explains that in Varlamore, justice is delivered swiftly and harshly. You say that the letter could have been planted and possibly have allowed the traitor to get away with it. They explain that there are some tensions for who should be the ruler of the Varlamorian kingdom, including the Tullus family, who used to be the rulers for the longest time of Varlamore's history, only having switched houses in the last 100 years. There is plenty of reason for there to be a revenge plot to take over the throne. You also bring up the fact that Twilight's Promise and the Final Dawn were mentioned in the letter. The Twilight emissaries are a religious cult with an unhealthy obsession with the end of the world, which they call the Final Dawn, and believe that they should be bringing it about. You can learn more about it by speaking with Metzli in the library. She explains the concept of Shimua, an interpretation of a belief passed down from the old ones. When the god of light and the god of dark merge into one, the world will burn to ashes. Then, something can rise from those embers and the cycle of the world continues once more. Some in the cult believe it's their duty to make the world end, and they're not stopping at anything to get that task done. Suddenly the palace is raided by a bunch of cultists. After you defeat them, You find that Metzli has been stabbed near the heart. The prince already sent word to the queen. You now have to make a plan on how to deal with the cultist problem. You are rewarded with the ability to use Quetzals. You can now use the Civitas Illa Fortis teleport and gain 3000 thieving XP. Completing this quest is a requirement for Perilous Moons and the Heart of Darkness, which is the next quest I'll be completing.